split his time between the two rooms. God only knew the last time he'd slept. Must have gone for his 10th cup of coffee. So damn stubborn, Mason grumbled, turning from the window to stare at Sawyer laying in the hospital bed. Jesus Christ. The last couple of days had been like something out of a goddamn movie. Shit like this didn't happen in Riverside Falls. They weren't supposed to worry about attempted murder, never mind 2 attempts in 1 fucking week. You still should have been able to figure it out and do your fucking job. Sawyer and Drew sure as hell wouldn't be in the conditions they were in if he had. Mason crossed the room and sat in the chair next to Sawyer. He looked slightly better than he had after surgery 2 days before to close a tear in his spleen, which wasn't really saying much considering how banged up the guy was. Mason's eyes scanned down Sawyer's right leg, encased in a long splint. They'd apparently held off on fixing his leg until his condition stabilized, which had been early that morning, before all hell broke loose. A respiratory therapist had weaned him off sedation and the ventilator as soon as they'd felt he could handle it, and he'd been somewhat coherent for the first time a few hours after the surgery. Hence, the only reason Grant had been here with Sawyer and had left Drew with Lisa. One more thing for Grant to blame himself for. It was something any one of them would have done in Grant's position, but tell that to the obstinate guy who was, at this very moment, blaming himself for everything. Mason let his eyes roam over the sleeping man in the hospital bed, who, no doubt, would be out for a while from the pain meds. Sawyer had a long road ahead of him, but seeing him without the tube in his mouth was a substantial improvement. There was something about Sawyer being able to breathe on his own that transformed him from knocking on death's door to giving the Grim Reaper the finger and telling him to fuck off. But then, Sawyer had always seemed like a fighter, to the point where Mason figured Sawyer didn't know how to be anything else. He looked younger when he slept, his forehead void of worry lines, a scowl nowhere to be found. With Sawyer's eyes closed, Mason couldn't see the torment always present in their depths. Was there ever a time in Sawyer's life when he was happy? Mason tried to recall ever seeing a smile on the guy's face, but came up short. It was a shame. The man was gorgeous. Mason gently pushed a brown wave back from Sawyer's forehead, trying not to wake him or touch the bruises and cuts still healing on his face. They were hard to look at, more so than the ones littering his arms. One more painful reminder of why Sawyer was laying in this bed. "Oh my God!" a woman's choked voice cried from the doorway. Mason looked over, watching as the woman covered her mouth, then leaned her face on the man's chest to her left. "I can't see him like this." "He needs us right now, Sharon." The man kissed the top of her head, and she nodded, wiping the tears from her blotchy cheeks. The man met Mason's gaze for a split second as he moved the woman toward Sawyer's bedside. She let go of him and leaned over Sawyer, her trembling fingers following the path Mason's just had as she gently pushed Sawyer's unruly hair back. "Sawyer, we're here, honey." She took a deep, shuddering breath, then hung her head, a whimpering sob escaping. She covered her mouth and pressed her eyes closed, releasing more tears that fell silently onto Sawyer's chest, quickly absorbed by the hospital gown. The man behind her rubbed comforting circles on her back, and it seemed to give her strength. They have to be Sawyer's parents. As if noticing Mason for the first time, the woman glanced over to him with bloodshot eyes, so much like Sawyer's. Are you his boyfriend?" "Sharon." The man's firm tone and shake of his head had Mason eyeing him with a whole hell of a lot of judgment. That was until he added, "We have to respect his wishes, even if he's not awake to argue with us." "You're right. I'm sorry. I guess it was just wishful thinking, and, well—" She looked down toward the bed. Mason didn't remember doing it, didn't even know how long he'd been doing it, but at some point he'd taken Sawyer's hand. A sudden warmth wrapped around their joined hands, and for reasons he didn't want to examine too closely, he didn't